mean, there's no doubt about it that China is experiencing an economic downturn right now. We look at the unemployment, especially amongst the youth in China. This is a very big issue. It's over 20%. I think that you look at the real estate market. This is something that is undergoing a very big transition. For example, when I first moved to China in 2007, the real estate market was growing exponentially. I actually purchased a home in China in 2009. I was able to sell that several years later. But this was a time where, you could buy real estate really to speculate. You could buy real estate with the intention that it's going to go up in a lot of value. You're going to be able to make some good money on that return. And as things happen in real estate market, very similar to what we saw in the United States in 2008, 2009, where people started becoming very, very aggressive, buying many houses, trying to flip as many times as possible. And then the entire real estate market collapsed. And that was the financial crisis that we saw, led by the United States. So I think what now is, you've seen China's government come out and say, look, we don't want you to speculate on housing anymore. That's not going to be something that you're going to do. You buy a house, you go live in it. And so you're going to see real estate prices start to come down. So I think people that were caught, speculating and trying to flip houses, they've lost a lot of money. And I think there's a lot of issues in China as far as the economics. But I think that there's also, when you actually go to China, I spent 2 months this summer on the ground traveling in China. There is still a lot of optimism. I still think that there is, for example, we were there for 2 months. Every single restaurant is completely filled. Coffee shops are filled, bars are filled. It's not like there's a huge economic downturn where no one's doing anything and everybody's suffering. It's more of a shift. And I think what we're seeing is, for example, my best example I can give you, 2007, China's economy grew by 14%, right? It's an astronomical growth, for a country like that. Well, certainly now it's 2024. China's economy is much larger than it was in 2007. So, it's projected to grow 5% this year. Now, 5% for China is a relatively low number, but compared to Western countries, it's actually very high. And, again, it's a maturing of a market. So again, I still think that there's many good opportunities. You look at certainly in industries like AI, electric vehicles, there's still opportunities. So I do tend to be very positive because I'm much more of an optimist. I'm always try to look for the positive in everything. When that doesn't matter if I'm looking at China or the United States or Russia or Europe or anywhere in the world. I'm trying to figure out what is the positive and how do we work together. I think the interesting thing is that we live in a very polarized world. If you look at really any major issue in the United States, right, it's, you talk about gun laws, abortion, immigration, it's a 50-50 split. So we live in this polarized world. So now we talk about China and we talk about the fact that, for many people, they look at China in a very negative light. And the reality is that the vast majority of the world doesn't. The majority of the world looks at China in a much more positive light. You certainly look at that in other countries around the world. Africa, the entire continent of Africa, the 53 countries there. You look at South America, you look at Southeast Asia, you look at the Middle East, you certainly look at other countries in Asia. There's a much different viewpoint than what we see in typical Western media. There's always this thought that, America is a good guy because we're a democracy and China's a bad guy because it's autocracy. But there's a lot more nuance to that. And what I really wanted to really convey in our interview is just that you need to go to China and experience it for yourself. Because I see so many people that have this opinion about China and they've never spent a single day in the country. And the simple reality is like I said in that interview, if you actually go to China and you experience it, you're going to come away with a much different perspective than what's presented to you in Western media. So maybe you don't like the content that I make. That's fine. I have no problem with people, liking it or not liking it. But what I do hope is that you do at least go to China and try it and see it for yourself. And like I said, I think you're going to come away with a very different perception of what you probably thought of before.
And what's your view on the next 5-10 years of the world?
The message that I always preach, Max, is that we have to find a way to coexist. And there is no option for a hot war, between the U.S. and China. That option is the end of mankind. That's the end of the world. So I am optimistic in the sense that I do think that at the end of the day, U.S. leaders and Chinese leaders both understand that. I think that there is sometimes these escalations or these calls for escalation, where people want, a lot of Chinese people even are saying, hey, we should be more aggressive towards the United States, or the U.S. saying, hey, we should be more aggressive to China. The truth is we need to find a way that we can coexist. We need to find a way that that the U.S. and China can work together, because the rest of the world depends on that. Right? If a U.S. and China relationship is good, everybody in the world basically wins as a result of that. It's the most important geopolitical relationship in the world. So it's something that I follow all the time. It's something that I built a YouTube channel about, constantly talking about U.S.-China relations. But it really starts with just people being more objective about China and, trying to find a way to promote this partnership, because we have been great partners for over 50 years. The United States, quite frankly, has gotten extremely wealthy off of China over the last 50 years. And, China has gotten very wealthy because of U.S. investment. And so, again, almost always you can kind of see this two-way street where both parties are really working together, they're benefiting together, the citizens are benefiting. Both American and Chinese citizens have benefited tremendously over a 50-year fruitful relationship. And I think it's something that we need more of, and we need to continue. And so my hope is that for the next 5-10 years, obviously I want to see this, Russia-Ukraine conflict be solved. I'd like to see peace in the Middle East. I'd like to see, better relations, really kind of going back in time. When I was first in China, 2007, 2008, U.S.-China relations was at an all-time high. It was great. It was fantastic. And trade was booming, and it's something that I think would be great for the world. So that's something that I'm definitely hope for, and it's definitely something that I will be continuing to preach here on YouTube.